Want to know how to really improve school culture? Hey, I'm your host, Jeff Veely, and this is the Campus Peace Podcast. Join me after school as we discuss how to empower students, boost staff morale, and squash squabbles. Well, hello there. I'm Jeff Veely, and I'm here with a special edition of the Campus Peace Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about influence in voting, but it may not be what you think. So go ahead and stand by. Obviously, it is election day, and I'm not here to tell you what to vote or remind you to vote. This is not my job. We're talking about education. We're talking about culture. And specifically today, I wanted to talk about a teacher's influence. See, as I went to vote today, I was reminded of something that happened to me in elementary school, how an elementary teacher of mine was very influential in maybe not in a good way. But I think what happened to me is a lesson that we can all take home and something we can learn from as we teach, whether you teach in a school, whether it's just raising your kids, maybe you're a school counselor, or you just interact with youth in some sort of other capacity. I think understanding that as adults we are influential is really important. And I think understanding that if you have a position like a teacher, if you have a position like a counselor, a coach, a pastor, some sort of community leader, that you have a little extra influence. And so again, I want to talk a little bit about the election, but not the election of 2020, because you've heard enough about that. As I sip my coffee here in my fancy Batman cup, I'm going to go back all the way back to third grade. So when I was in third grade, I had a teacher that decided to really talk about current events. And this just wasn't when the election came up. This was like all the time. We were constantly looking at current events. We were looking at how we should respond to things and just learning about the world around us. But I remember hearing about the election and her standing up in front of the classroom and sort of rallying the troops. You know that idea where you don't know a whole lot about a topic, and when you're young, when an adult sometimes explains something to you, you get excited and you're sort of trying to figure out like how you should respond or what you should think. Well, as a third grader, that's exactly where I was at. I had never participated in an election before, obviously. I knew there was a process of voting and then someone was going to become president, but I just didn't really know how the whole thing worked. And so I remember as my teacher was in front of the classroom, I was really curious to hear how my teacher was going to handle this. Was she going to tell us who she was going to vote for or who we should vote for? How do you even make that decision? I didn't know. Well, she certainly filled in the blanks, and not in a good way. Have you ever felt like someone was really steering you in a direction or just simply telling you what to do? And that became the basis for all of your thinking. Well, for me, that was the case with my third grade teacher and voting. See, she shared that voting according to her political party, and I'll spare you the details because I don't think we need any more division or swaying people in one way or another than we've already seen in the news. She made me think, and my classmates, as we sat in her third grade classroom, that voting a certain way was the right thing to do. And voting for the other political party was simply the wrong thing to do. Imagine this. You're sitting there as a third grader, and you're learning, like so many other lessons in school, what's right and what's wrong. And that becomes the standard that you now have. So from third grade through the rest of elementary, through middle school, through high school, looking through my lens from my understanding that day, there was a right way to vote and there was a wrong way to vote. There was a party that were the good guys and there were those that were the bad guys. So all the way through high school, up into a point, I thought there was a right way and a wrong way. Now, maybe you believe this. That's fine. I'm not going to try to change your opinion or whatever. But I feel like, and I remember there were conversations in that third grade classroom where I really thought that people that voted differently than my teacher we're the enemy. And regardless of how you feel of political parties, or maybe you're just over the election, that's how I felt this morning. I was like, oh, I just want them to stop texting me and calling and ads on social media and all that. Regardless of how you feel, I think this is a problem. When we start to see someone else as our enemy, not different views, not different opinions, not a different way of doing life or different lens in which someone looks through, but we see them as the enemy. Sometimes I call this in my work with bullying prevention, social aggression, becoming what you hate. When there's something that you just despise in someone else, and the more you get passionate about it, the more people kind of pull back and say, well, you're actually becoming that thing. Like that behavior you didn't like in them is actually rising up in you. It takes a very courageous friend or family member or influencer, teacher to point that out. I remember in high school running into a friend of mine, and there was another election, and we sat down, we grabbed coffee, and she really just kind of asked like point blank, so like, what are your political views? What do you see and why? And I laid it out on the table, and I was so surprised that she was the opposite political party that my teacher was. And I remember thinking, like, this is one of my dearest friends. Like, she's a really good person. Like, she's a bad guy. Like, I didn't know. I didn't know. Again, here's my third grade mind in a high school body going, well, how is this possible? This is crazy. And it all comes back to influence. My teacher's influence on me in third grade was pretty major. If I look back, if I made a list of favorite teachers, this teacher would be on that list. That's the level of respect I had in the relationship I had. But I think there was something really damaging. And I think there's a lesson for us to be learned, especially us in education. We have tremendous influence. Teachers, authority figures, we have tremendous influence. And because of that, there's laws that if you're in an authority position, there's certain things you cannot do that other people can do. Because of that influence, because of that authority. When I look back, I don't know that it was necessarily appropriate for her to share her political views. I know it definitely wasn't appropriate to teach me good guys and bad guys and who an enemy was based on a political party. If I look back, I realized there was some damage done there. And some things I've had to wrestle with as I've gotten older and, of course, now as an adult. And I think I really wish my teacher would have taught me how to think instead of what to think. Think about that for a second. Isn't that what we want as a kid or even as an adult trying to learn something? We don't want someone to teach us what to think. We want them to teach us how to think, how to look at things. It's so much more powerful. And so on this election day, I want you to consider that. And whoever you're influencing in your life, whether it be kids, your own kids in a school building, don't take your influence lightly. This isn't a religious podcast, but I find this interesting to share, and I believe it's true. It says in the Bible that teachers will be held to a higher level of accountability than others. I don't take that lightly. You see, influence is so powerful. And whoever you're influencing, I think it's important for you to remember to really take that role seriously and to really influence carefully. Don't teach people what to think, but teach them how to think. Have a great rest of the day. And no matter what the decision comes down to tonight or tomorrow, man, I hope that you will approach it with peace, with civility, and with the golden rule that you would treat others the way that you want to be treated. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's show, please help me achieve an A+. Simply take a moment to rate and review the show wherever you're listening. Then catch up on episodes and grab some free resources over at campuspeacepodcast.com.